Welcome to another episode of the Terry and Frank Show. I hope you've been enjoying this series on the human factors of leadership. We have another good one today. Hi, I'm Frank Wander. I'm the founder of People Productive, a company that helps companies and the people that work for them thrive together. Terry?
Hello, I'm Terri Mays, and I'm a certified culture engineer with focus on bringing out the best in people.
So Terry, we got a good episode today. Maybe we should just get right into it because we're always covering some scientific aspect of leadership. This is the human side of leadership, things that you should be aware of. So today we're going to talk about the candle problem. The candle problem is an experiment from 1945. A gentleman named Dunker, a Gestalt psychologist, actually was the one who conducted the experiment. So let's take a look at the setup, and then we could talk about what the findings were and how over the years since then, people have added other dimensions to this experiment and in fact, dug deeper and uncovered new things. So I think you're going to find this really interesting. So let me share my screen.
Yes, and these human factors are just that. They're the human side of it all. A lot of times when you think about leadership, people start talking about problem solving skills and just leadership abilities in general, but nobody really thinks about the soft skills. And these are some of the things that can really make or break your organization and your leadership if you're able to learn how to bring out the best in people and how to look at the human side, because that is really impacting your organization, whether you believe it or not. Those things really matter. And so the things that we're talking about in this series are really life skills that can be taken not just with leadership, but into your everyday life.
100%. There's no question about it. It is super important to master the human side of business. People are the most important tool in every company. The most effective use of talent is the difference between winning and losing. So where people know everything about process and technology, nothing about the people, you have the opportunity here to really think about it, become an expert on the human side of leadership or the human side of collaboration if you're an individual contributor. These things matter. So look, here I'm sharing, you can see a table. This is the setup of the experiment. Participants in the experiment were basically given an assignment to attach the candle to the wall and make sure that it didn't drip on the table. And it's very interesting. So they're given this box of tacks, they're given matches, and they were given the candle. And they were asked to really think about it. And people came up with some very clever ways of doing it. So here you'll see some of them try to attach it to the wall with a thumbtack. You know, clever, but it didn't actually work. Other people decided that, you know, they could take the candle and melt the wax on the side and just attach it to the wall. And in fact, that really wasn't very effective. So the net of this is that people had to literally start to think out of the box. That's not where the saying comes from, but it was really interesting. They saw this box with thumbtacks and they didn't think beyond it. It's something called functional fixedness. And when you look at that, the ultimate solution was that people would take the box, empty it of thumbtacks, take two thumbtacks, put the box on the wall, put the candle in the box, and that was above the table and it couldn't drip on the table. And that required some real out of the box thinking. So Terri, let's talk about this. What does that mean for leaders? And what does that mean for individuals in companies today? What should they be aware of?
Right. I think this has direct implications with innovation in all of the ways that things are changing in the world, just the innovations that we're seeing all around us with automotive and with just technology in general. You start to see that people are really starting to think outside the box and really use things for more than one purpose. And so as a leader, your language, the words that you use, the way you are expressing yourself can either take people out of the box or put them in a box and make them feel like they have to conform and do things a certain way, or they'll feel like, hey, I have the liberty to use the tools that I have in a different way. But that's an environmental thing. You've got to be in a situation where people feel like they can be creative And that's really what this experiment is all about. How much can you think in a different way, not necessarily seeing objects as they've always been used, but how can I use this in a more creative way to solve a problem? And that's kind of where we are today in healthcare. Very creative things have been done to
Mhm.
solve this coronavirus problem. Even with just how hospitals have managed, and we've all seen it, and how restaurants have had to solve the coronavirus problem.
Super
How are we going
creativity at some
to
of these
function?
restaurants. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've all seen it right before our eyes with this COVID-19 issue that we've dealt with now for over a year. The creativity levels in the way that business have functioned has gone through the roof, like things that you never would have thought. Lots
Mhm.
of companies allowing people to work from home has really been an out of the box thinking,
Mhm.
because they thought that people had to be there and present to collaborate. They had to be physically in the same location. And what people are seeing is, no, you don't. So all of this is really just a way of coming outside of, this is the way that we've always done things, so that you can begin to think about things in a new way, in a more creative way.
Yeah. I mean, innovation is really putting ideas together and applying them in a new way. Very few people are doing real breakthrough innovation where they're getting to something that's fundamentally brand new. They're taking
Right.
things that exist and applying them in new ways. And this says that you've got to give people, get them used to really thinking about things beyond the fixed use that they see them in. And, these are self-limiting beliefs. All of
Right.
it is self-limiting. They did the same experiment with kids. And what they found was that kids 5 and under, to them, everything's an object to be used any way they want. They're very good at solving these problems very quickly. Whereas by ages 6 to 7, this whole notion of an object as a fixed thing that has a purpose and a use began to set in. They were far less creative. So as a leader, your people do have this self-limiting belief based on the way they viewed the world and how they use tools and think about tools as having a purpose. And it's hard for a lot of them to get beyond that. Bring out the child in your people.
Right.
Get them to think about, ask questions. How else could these things be used and applied? Let's break out of the box, so to speak,
Right.
and really think about things in a whole new way. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. This is another good reason to have a diverse team, because when you have different backgrounds, different upbringings, you
Totally.
experience life in a different way. And so just by being around people that are not the same as you tend to think about things a little bit differently, which will in turn cause you to come up with better solutions. I
Mhm.
think about a lot of things where, you can look at something and tell whether or not a woman's ideas or thoughts or opinions were included in the design. There are things that
Mhm.
we look at all the time, and I look at certain vehicles and, just different things that we use all the time. And you can tell when this was designed with a woman in mind versus a man in mind.
Mhm.
It's just obvious in a lot of ways. So having that diverse team, and having even just beyond
Mhm.
men and women being on the team, but people from different backgrounds, it all plays into having a much more innovative and creative environment. But you've got to give those people a voice, and you've got to let everyone feel like their voice can be heard. They have a seat at the table. They can share their ideas openly and freely. All of that stems from leadership. Leadership controls the culture in the room. So if you want people to feel like they're accepted and they belong, they have a voice, that has to come from the leaders.
Mhm. Yeah, no question. And, this experiment, when you're a leader, here's another interesting kind of finding that came out of this. The original experiment was done in 1945, and people have repeated it many times with all different groups of people, and the results are generally the same. However, in 1962, Sam Glucksberg decided that he would put a twist on this experiment, and he broke the participants into two groups. One that was just asked to go solve the problem, and another one that was going to be given a good reward for solving it. And what was the finding? Well, the finding is that the people with the big reward were under much more pressure. And on average, it took them 3.5 minutes longer to solve the problem than the people who did not have that pressure. So I think as a leader, this clearly tells you that, when you really want to create innovation, ramping up the pressure, that's not going to work. And this is why we know think time, where you're allowed to just sit and relax and think about things, is one of the things companies need to put in place if they want to drive innovation. And in our own research that we did with Rutgers Business School, companies that had think time were in this fourth quartile of high performance, and they had think time that was significantly above others in the third quartile and below. So this stuff is all real. That unpressured think time matters. And this is just more evidence that you can begin to shape your environment. You can shape the way people work. You can really shape the environment to be more innovative. These human factors of innovation are very real. They exist, and you need to use them as a leader to your advantage.
Yes. And what's really cool is you get the benefit of it all. So you may have to put in a little extra effort up front to really consider the human factors, because it's not something that's normally talked about. It's not something that's covered or even listed in job descriptions when you look for different jobs.
Yeah.
Rarely do you see anything about the human side of business, but it's that part of the business that will either make or break your organization. So it may take a little effort to really consider things and consider people as more than just resources or tools to use. It's going to take a little bit more thinking and really considering how you view people and how you view their time and their talents and their resources, really considering people. But once you do that, it's exponential what you get out of it. The rewards are so much greater. You end up with a much more high performing team than if you just considered people as almost like robots and just expect them to come in and do their work and go home and not consider them as a person.
Yeah.
You really put yourself at a disservice. It's really to the
The
detriment.
mechanical industrial view of the world. They're a part to be used. And,
Right.
if we don't like this part, we'll get another one. No, that isn't how it works at all. The fact is, you should know and understand how to create an environment where people are both willing and able to give their best. So you got to motivate them, you got to unlock the energy, and then you have to understand these human factors to create an environment where they really can give their best, because you've removed different obstacles. You understand some of the things that are in the way. And that means you've got to care about building that environment. You've got to care about this as an area where you can build competencies and expertise, just like you can doing anything else. So tune in to this series, learn about it, think about it. How does this apply to your environment? Make sure you subscribe. These human factors are real. They're all well known. Most people are just not applying them. They haven't moved to really that point yet of expertise and understanding and seeing that this is competitive advantage. That's what we're talking about here. And nothing short of that, right, Tara?
That's right. Absolutely. You want that edge for your organization. And the way you get that edge is by being that kind of a leader that can use culture to your advantage, because culture is at play in the organization. No question about it. It's the underlying current that's moving in the organization. What you want to do is build that culture that helps move your organization in a positive way, as opposed to being that current that's working against people all the time.
Yeah. And, one final note on this experiment that I would just add as we kind of get to the end of this discussion. And around 2000, some linguists got involved, and they handed people the assignment, this candle problem written in two different ways. One was just a description of the assignment and what to do. And another one, it said book of matches. They had book underlined, they had matches underlined. A box of tacks, box tacks. When they saw the underline, those people performed, I think, 25% better, the ones who were given the experiment rules with the underline, than the ones who were just given verbiage with no underline. So the functional fixedness very much tied to linguistics. And you as a leader can talk about things in a way that it opens up possibilities for people, because that's what that means. When they saw a box and box of matches, but box was underlined, or box of tacks, box was underlined, tax was underlined, became two different objects right away. And they were quicker at solving the problem. So there's some subtlety, but this stuff is all real, and people have done research into it. So very powerful. Make sure you
Yes.
smack the bell and subscribe. Share this video with people that you care about, who you want to learn more about the human side of business, because this is a competitive advantage, not just for the companies who have leaders who do this, but for you as an individual, because it's going to help you excel and
Right.
outcompete. Right, Tara?
Right. That's absolutely right. And remember, we're on live on Wednesday, so we'd love to have you chat and
Yes.
just share your
Wednesdays,
comments.
4
That's
Eastern.
Wednesday 4 Eastern.
Yeah, don't miss the show. Please share this. We look forward to having you in the audience. So, please do come join us 4 o'clock on Wednesdays. Look at the back episodes. There's a series on that People Productivity channel, and you can go draw on all of those. It's a lot of great content. This has been a very good series, right, Tara?
Yes, absolutely.
And we have another great episode next week. You'll have to tune in. Surprise in every one of these.
Yes.
So anyway, hey, thanks for coming. We love having an audience, and we love sharing great stuff with you. So take care and be well.
All right. Bye for now.